Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Happier Life podcast. I'm your host, Clare Deacon. After deciding survival wasn't enough, I set out on a path to live my best life. I wanted to thrive. Now I'm on a mission to support others. Think you're not good enough, confident enough, brave enough? I'm here to tell you you are, and you can achieve anything. This is your time, so let's do this. Hello and welcome to the Happier Life podcast. I'm Clare Deacon, positive psychology coach, trauma-informed therapist, founder of Happya, and someone who knows what it means to live through the storm and still believe in the sunshine. Today's episode is called Why Your Trauma Doesn't Define You, Even If It Feels Like It Does. This one is tender and true. Because if you've ever found yourself stuck in the aftermath of pain, if you've ever looked at your life and thought, this is who I am now, not in a hopeful way, but in a defeated, shut down kind of way, I want you to know I see you. And more importantly, I need you to hear this. Your trauma is something you've experienced. It's not the sum total of who you are. Let that land for a second. Because when you've lived through pain, through grief, through fear and chaos, your nervous system, your identity, your self-perception can get tangled in the story of survival. It becomes the lens you look through, the filter for every choice, the reason behind why you hold back or don't dream or stop trusting. But what if your story didn't end at the trauma? Let's clarify something really important here. Trauma isn't the event, it's the impact. What feels traumatic for one person may not for another. It doesn't have to make headlines to matter. Just because your story hasn't been wrapped in a dramatic narrative doesn't mean it isn't valid. The effects of trauma are shaped by many things in your history, your resilience, your support systems. So if you've ever dismissed your experience because others had it worse, I invite you to pause. Your pain is valid. Your healing is important. What if your story was just beginning after it? That's what we're going to explore today, post-traumatic growth. How to shift from being defined by your past to consciously creating your future and the power you have to rewrite your narrative. Not by denying what happened, but by reclaiming who you are beyond it. When trauma becomes identity, one of the most damaging things trauma does is blur the line between what you've lived through and who you believe you are. You stop saying, this is something that happened to me, and start saying, this is who I am. You internalize the chaos, the shutdown, the mistrust, the belief that you are broken or too much or too damaged. And you might not even realize you're doing it. You just stop applying for things. You stop making eye contact. You stop asking for help. I want to just take a moment because sometimes it helps to have an example of this. So for me personally, I don't tend to use the term that I am a widow. Now, technically, I am a widow, but I refuse to take on what I perceive in my head to be what a widow is. I'm not going to conform with the stereotyping that I have in my head. You know, when my husband first passed away, I literally had this image of Queen Victoria that I was going to be forever sad, forever in mourning, and forever wearing black. And it was always ironic when I had this conversation with my therapist because I generally was wearing black at the time because that's a go-to, or it was a go-to, was wearing black all the time. So for me, if I showed up to people and said, "Hello, my name's Clare Deacon and I'm a widow," I feel as though I have to be and behave as a different person than who I really am. I would have to be sad and withdrawn. And that I'm not prepared to do that because my husband wouldn't want me to do that. And I'm not going to allow, one of the biggest things I say is I don't allow his legacy to be one of a broken family. I don't want his life to be remembered by the sadness of how it ended. So for me, I reject that label because I could see myself being in a space where it would mean that I would become withdrawn, that I wouldn't be able to participate in lots of the adventures, silly things that I did, um, because it wouldn't fit into that characteristic. So it's just a quick example for me how I did that. I have rejected that. I don't say I'm a widow. It's something that happened to me. So I will say I have been widowed. It doesn't define who I am. Hopefully that makes sense for you to apply to yourself. Okay, so I was saying you might not even realize that you're doing it or taking on that persona. I obviously had quite a conscious awareness of how I was perceiving becoming a widow, being widowed. So it can mean that you stop asking for help, for support in making change and making a difference. You stay in relationships, environments, connections that shrink you. You settle because somewhere your mind has decided this is what I get, this is how I perform now, this is what I deserve. Let me be clear, that is the trauma talking. That's old stories, limiting beliefs, it's societal expectations, it's culture. It's not the truth. You are not what hurt you. You are what survived it. And within that survival is the possibility to thrive. As I've said, I felt this deeply after I lost my husband. I believed that that widow's role was to play some silent, somber version of Queen Victoria, mourning for the rest of her life. That's what I thought was expected of me, and people don't help. You hear, I don't know how you do it. If it were me, I'd take to my bed. Well, let's hope it's never you, because the reality is far from what you imagine. I had to slowly learn that I didn't have to stay in that story. That grief shaped me, yes, but it didn't own me. And the other thing is that when you do reject that, you have to go against other people's stories and versions of what they think it should look like. And perhaps that's a podcast for another day of some of those things that those that don't understand or make presumptions, make judgments, and have expectations of how you should place all those shoulds on you. And it takes a lot of strength and energy to not only battle with those thoughts inside your head, but to have them facing you in the world outside is really tough, which is what drives me in doing these podcasts and getting these messages out there that there is hope and there is something different. So I want to go a bit more into understanding post-traumatic growth. We often hear about PTSD, but what about PTG, post-traumatic growth? Now, the thing is, in reality, we don't actually hear enough about PTSD. It is so much more common than most people realize. And those experience PTSD symptoms, they're often misdiagnosed with depression, bipolar, anxiety, ADHD. One of the biggest myths is that PTSD only affects soldiers or people in combat. The truth, anyone can experience it. It's not about what happens, it's not the event, it's about how it was experienced. For me, PTSD showed up as hypervigilance, panic attacks, flashbacks. It didn't look like the movies. It looked like not being able to breathe in the supermarket. It looked like terror at times. It looked like scanning every room, like startling at sudden sounds. My body was braced for something that already happened. So post-traumatic growth is the concept that after trauma, people can experience deep, meaningful change. And not because the trauma was a gift, not because they found silver linings, but because in the aftermath, they were forced to rebuild. And in that rebuilding, something new was born. Post-traumatic growth shows up like a deeper appreciation for life, a stronger sense of self, healthier boundaries, greater emotional awareness, a newfound purpose. And it's important to say that post-traumatic growth isn't about bypassing pain. It's not about slapping positivity on grief. It's about integration, about finding meaning in the mess, about choosing what comes next. And choice is everything. For me, the reason I'm so passionate about sharing this message is because post-traumatic growth offers something so many trauma survivors struggle to find: hope. And from hope, belief is born, and belief leads to motivation, to action, to change. You don't need to endlessly recount your story on a therapist's sofa. You don't need to wait for a magic wand. And it's not reserved for the lucky few. Growth is available right here, right now. Rewriting the narrative. So, how do we go from being stuck in trauma identity to stepping into growth? It starts with language. Notice the way you talk about yourself. Do you say, I'm anxious? Or I'm experiencing anxiety right now? Do you say, I'm broken? Or I've been hurt and I'm healing? Do you say, I can't do that, or that feels hard right now? But maybe it's always that achievement of adding the word yet onto it. I can't do it yet. I haven't recovered yet. Language creates identity. Identity shapes possibility. So speak with compassion, speak with spaciousness, speak like someone you love is listening because they are. You are. You get to choose how you narrate your life, claiming your future gently, powerfully. Once you start to shift the story, you can begin to build again. This doesn't mean hustle. It doesn't mean productivity. It means alignment. Ask yourself, what matters to me now? What makes me feel alive? What do I need to feel safe, resourced, inspired? Start there. One step, one choice, one breath. If you find yourself slipping into old patterns, freezing, fawning, people pleasing, that's okay. That's part of the process. Healing, grief isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. Each time you return to yourself, you do it with more knowledge, more softness, more power. You don't have to get it perfect. You just have to keep showing up. So let's just recap what I hope you take from today. Trauma may shape you, but it does not define you. You are allowed to grow beyond the pain. Post-traumatic growth is real and possible and powerful. You can rewrite your story starting now. And healing isn't a destination, it's a practice of choosing again. And if you need a hand holding the pen, I'm here. This podcast, my weekly letters, our sessions, my DMs, they're open. You are the author now. And your next chapter, it can be whatever you choose. So until next time, take kind care of you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, ensure you hit subscribe, head on over to my website happiercoach.com, sign up for the weekly newsletter, and let me support you in living a happier life. I'm your host, Clare Deacon. Thank you for listening. Have a fabulous day.